I didn't show up to my own wedding. And when my husband called me in tears, begging me to come save him from the chaos he created, I just stared at my phone and smiled. But let me back up, because the story of how I got there, how I went from the girl who said yes to everything to the woman who said nothing at all when it mattered most, that's the part that'll make your blood boil. And if you're watching this from somewhere in the world where you've ever felt invisible in your own relationship, where you've been told to shrink yourself to make someone else comfortable, then you need to hear this. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from, because I want to know I'm not alone in this. And if you're here for the kind of stories that don't sugarcoat the mess, the kind that show you what happens when quiet women finally stop being quiet, then you need to check the description box below. There are more stories there, stories about betrayal, revenge, and women who refuse to stay down. Trust me, you'll want to see them all. Now, let me tell you how it started. His name was Ethan Cole, and I met him on a Tuesday in March at a coffee shop in Portland, Oregon. He had that kind of confidence that fills a room before he even speaks, tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that always looked like he'd just run his hands through it. He wore expensive watches and tailored blazers, and when he smiled at me from across the counter, I felt like I'd been chosen. My name is Claire Dawson, and back then, I was 27 years old, working as a junior marketing coordinator at a mid-sized firm downtown. I wasn't remarkable. I wasn't the kind of woman who turned heads. I was the kind who blended into the background, who worked late without complaint, who said yes when people asked for favors and never expected anything in return. I think that's what Ethan liked about me at first. I was easy. Not in the way you might think, but easy to mold, easy to manage, easy to fit into the life he was building. Our first date was at a French restaurant I couldn't afford. He ordered for me without asking what I wanted, and I told myself it was romantic, that he was taking charge, that this was what it felt like to be with a man who knew what he wanted. He talked about his job in finance, about the deals he was closing, about the house he was going to buy in the West Hills. He asked me questions, too, but I noticed he didn't really listen to the answers. His eyes would drift to his phone, or to the wine list, or to the couple at the table next to us. But when he looked at me, really looked at me, I felt like I mattered. We dated for 2 years. 2 years of me bending, shifting, reshaping myself to fit the version of Claire he wanted. He didn't like it when I wore red lipstick, said it made me look too harsh. He didn't like it when I talked about work, said it was boring. He didn't like it when I spent too much time with my friends, said they were a bad influence. And every time he told me what he didn't like, I changed. I softened my lipstick to nude. I stopped talking about my projects. I saw my friends less and less until their texts started to fade, until I was alone with him, which is exactly what he wanted. The proposal happened on a Friday night in May, 2 years to the day after we met. He took me to the same coffee shop where we first locked eyes, and he got down on one knee right there in front of everyone. The ring was beautiful. White gold with a princess-cut diamond that caught the light and threw it back in 1,000 directions. People clapped. A woman cried. I said yes because I didn't know what else to say, because I'd spent 2 years convincing myself that this was love, that this was what I'd been working toward. But here's the thing no one tells you about proposals. They're not really about love. They're about performance. They're about the story you get to tell, the photos you get to post, the validation you get from strangers who don't know that behind the smiles, you're already starting to disappear. The planning started immediately. Ethan wanted a big wedding, 300 guests, a venue overlooking the Columbia River, a live band, an open bar, the works. He wanted it to be perfect, he said. He wanted everyone to see what we were building together. But the more we planned, the more I realized that we didn't mean the two of us. It meant him. Every decision was his. The color scheme, navy and gold, because he thought it looked sophisticated. The menu, steak and salmon, because he didn't trust chicken at weddings. The guest list, mostly his colleagues, his fraternity brothers, his extended family. When I suggested inviting my cousin Rachel, who I'd been close to growing up, he said we didn't have room. It's our day, Claire, he said, squeezing my hand like he was being reasonable. We have to be selective. And I nodded. I always nodded. The months leading up to the wedding were a blur of tastings and fittings and seating charts. I felt like I was planning someone else's wedding, like I was a hired coordinator instead of the bride. My opinions didn't matter. My preferences were overruled. When I said I wanted wildflowers in my bouquet, he said roses were more classic. When I said I wanted to write my own vows, he said traditional vows were more meaningful. When I said I wanted a small, intimate ceremony, he looked at me like I'd suggested we get married at a gas station. This is a once-in-a-lifetime event, he said. Why would you want to make it small? I didn't have an answer. Or maybe I did, and I just didn't say it. Maybe I wanted it small because I didn't want to perform. Maybe I wanted it intimate because I didn't want 300 strangers watching me promise forever to a man I wasn't sure I even liked anymore. The breaking point came 3 weeks before the wedding. We were at the venue for a final walkthrough, and the coordinator was going over the timeline. Cocktail hour at 5. Ceremony at 6. Reception at 7. First dance at 8. Cake cutting at 9. It all felt so scripted, so rehearsed, like we were actors in a play we didn't write. And where will the bride be getting ready? The coordinator asked, pen poised over her clipboard. At the hotel, Ethan said. With her bridesmaids. I blinked. Wait, I thought we were getting ready together. At the house. He looked at me like I'd just said something absurd. Why would we do that? Because it's our wedding day, I said slowly. I thought we'd spend it together. He laughed. Not a kind laugh. A dismissive one. Claire, it's bad luck to see the bride before the ceremony. Everyone knows that. But I don't care about that, I said, my voice rising despite myself. I want to be with you. I want us to be together. He sighed, the way you sigh at a child who's being difficult. This isn't about what you want. It's about doing it right. The coordinator shifted uncomfortably. I felt my face flush, my throat tighten. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell him that it was my wedding too, that I had a say, that I mattered. But instead, I nodded. I smiled. I said, "You're right. I wasn't thinking." And that's when I knew. That's when I felt it in my bones, in my gut, in the part of me that had been shrinking for 2 years. I knew I didn't want to marry him. I didn't want to spend the rest of my life nodding and smiling and pretending I didn't have opinions. But I didn't know how to stop it. The invitations were sent. The deposits were paid. My family was flying in. How could I back out now? So I didn't. I kept planning. I kept pretending. I kept telling myself it would get better once we were married, once the stress of the wedding was over, once we settled into our new life together. I kept lying to myself because the truth was too terrifying to face. But the universe has a funny way of forcing your hand. And 3 days before the wedding, something happened that made everything else look like child's play. The rehearsal dinner was held at a restaurant downtown, a place Ethan had chosen because one of his college friends owned it. It was sleek and modern, all exposed brick and Edison bulbs, the kind of place where the menu didn't list prices and the waitstaff called you by your first name even though you'd never met them before. I wore a cream-colored dress that Ethan had approved. Modest neckline, knee-length hem, nothing too flashy. My hair was blown out, my makeup was subtle, and I felt like a mannequin. Beautiful, but lifeless. I smiled when people congratulated us. I hugged his mother when she gushed about how perfect everything was. I clinked glasses when his father made a toast about legacy and family and the future. But the whole time, I felt like I was watching myself from a distance, like I was floating somewhere above the scene, observing this woman who looked like me but wasn't quite me anymore. She laughed at the right moments. She nodded when people spoke. She didn't flinch when Ethan put his hand on her lower back, steering her from table to table like she was a prize he was showing off. The dinner itself was fine. My parents were there, my mom in her floral dress, looking nervous and out of place among Ethan's polished family, my dad in his one good suit, quiet as always. My younger brother, Matt, sat at the end of the table, scrolling through his phone and avoiding eye contact with everyone. I wanted to sit with them, to feel like I had people in my corner, but Ethan kept me at the head table, next to him, where I smiled and played the part. It wasn't until dessert was being served that I felt the first real crack in the facade I'd been holding together. Ethan's best man, a guy named Tyler Brooks who I'd met a handful of times and never liked, stood up with a glass of champagne in his hand. He was loud, the kind of guy who thought volume equaled charisma, and he launched into a speech that was supposed to be funny but mostly just made me uncomfortable. "I've known Ethan since freshman year at U of O," Tyler said, his voice booming across the restaurant. "And let me tell you, this man has had his fair share of wild times. Remember spring break in Cabo, bro? Man, those were the days." People laughed. Ethan grinned, leaning back in his chair like he was reliving a fond memory. I forced a smile, but my stomach twisted. "But seriously," Tyler continued, "I never thought I'd see the day when Ethan Cole would settle down. I mean, this guy was the king of keeping things casual. You know what I'm saying? But then he met Claire, and I guess she was the one who finally tamed him. Tamed him. Like I was some kind of animal trainer. Like I'd accomplished something by convincing him to commit." I felt my jaw tighten, but I kept smiling. Tyler raised his glass. "So here's to Ethan, for finally growing up. And to Claire, for putting up with his ass. Cheers." Everyone clinked glasses. I took a sip of champagne that tasted like ash. Ethan leaned over and kissed my temple, and I felt nothing. No warmth. No affection. Just the weight of his lips against my skin, like an obligation. After dessert, people started mingling. Ethan was surrounded by his friends, guys in navy blazers and women in cocktail dresses who looked like they'd stepped out of a catalogue. I stood on the periphery, sipping water because I didn't trust myself with more alcohol, and that's when I overheard it. Two of Ethan's college friends, Ryan and Josh, I think their names were standing a few feet away, talking in low voices. They didn't see me. Or maybe they did and didn't care. "Man, Ethan's really doing it," Ryan said, shaking his head. "I thought he'd back out." Josh laughed. "Nah, he's too smart for that. Claire's perfect for him. She doesn't ask questions, doesn't cause drama. She's like the ideal wife, you know? Low maintenance." Ryan snorted. "Low maintenance? Dude, she's practically invisible. I've been here 2 hours and I don't think I've heard her say more than 10 words. "That's the point," Josh said. "Ethan doesn't want someone who's going to challenge him. He wants someone who's going to make his life easier. And Claire's great at that." I felt like I'd been slapped. I stood there, frozen, my heart pounding in my chest. Invisible. Low maintenance. Great at making his life easier. Was that what I was to them? To him? I wanted to turn around and confront them, to tell them they didn't know me, that they didn't get to reduce me to some kind of accessory in Ethan's life. But I didn't. I just stood there, gripping my water glass so hard I thought it might shatter, and I let their words sink in. Because deep down, I knew they were right. That's exactly what I'd become. I'd spent 2 years making myself smaller, quieter, easier. I'd turned myself into the kind of woman who didn't make waves, who didn't have needs, who didn't take up space. And I'd done it willingly. I'd done it because I thought that's what love required. But it wasn't love. It was erasure. I excused myself and went to the bathroom, locking the door behind me and leaning against the sink. I stared at my reflection, at the woman in the cream-colored dress with the blown-out hair and the perfect makeup, and I didn't recognize her. She looked polished, put together, empty. I thought about the wedding, now just 3 days away. I thought about walking down the aisle in front of 300 people, most of whom I didn't know, to marry a man who saw me as low maintenance. I thought about the life that stretched out ahead of me, years of nodding and smiling and pretending I didn't have opinions, years of being invisible in my own marriage. And for the first time, I let myself think the thought I'd been avoiding for months. I don't want this. But I still didn't know how to stop it. So I splashed cold water on my face, reapplied my lipstick, and went back out to the party. I smiled when people talked to me. I laughed when they made jokes. I played the part. And when Ethan pulled me aside later that night, after most of the guests had left, and said, "You did great tonight. I'm proud of you." I wanted to ask him what exactly he was proud of. Proud that I'd stayed quiet? Proud that I'd made his life easier? Proud that I'd been invisible? But I didn't ask. I just said, "Thank you," and let him kiss me goodnight. 3 days. I had 3 days to figure out who I was and what I wanted. But honestly, I didn't think I had it in me to walk away. Until the next morning, when everything changed. The next morning, I woke up to a text from Ethan, *need to talk. Come over, *. It was Saturday, 2 days before the wedding, and I was supposed to spend the day packing for the honeymoon and doing last-minute errands. But his text had an edge to it, something urgent and cold, so I threw on jeans and a sweater and drove to his apartment in the Pearl District. He answered the door in sweatpants and a t-shirt, his hair still messy from sleep. He looked tired. Stressed. He didn't kiss me when I walked in, didn't even really look at me. He just gestured toward the couch and said, "Sit down. We need to talk." My stomach dropped. Those 4 words, "we need to talk," are never followed by anything good. I sat, my hands folded in my lap, and waited. He paced for a moment, rubbing the back of his neck, and then he turned to me and said, "I've been thinking a lot about the wedding. About everything." "Okay," I said slowly. My heart was pounding. "And I just want to make sure we're on the same page," he continued. "This wedding, it's a big deal for me. For my career, for my family. There are going to be a lot of important people there, and I need everything to go smoothly." "It will," I said, though I wasn't sure why I was reassuring him. "We've planned everything. It's going to be perfect." "I know," he said, but his tone suggested he didn't believe me. "But I need you to understand something, Claire. This day, it's important to me. It's my day." I blinked. "Your day." Our day, he corrected, but the damage was already done. "What I mean is, I need you to not make it about you." I stared at him. "What are you talking about?" He sighed, like I was being difficult. "I'm talking about the way you've been acting lately. At the rehearsal dinner, you barely talked to anyone. You just stood there, looking miserable. People noticed. Claire. My mom asked me if you were okay. Tyler said you seemed off." "I wasn't miserable," I said, my voice shaking. "I was just—" "You were making it about you," he interrupted. "And I need you to not do that on the wedding day. I need you to be present. I need you to smile. I need you to make a good impression. Can you do that?" I felt like I'd been punched. Make a good impression? Ethan, it's our wedding. It's not a business meeting. "It might as well be," he said flatly. "Do you know how many of my colleagues are going to be there? How many clients? This is a networking opportunity for me, Claire. I can't have you dragging the energy down." I couldn't speak. I just sat there, staring at him, trying to process what he was saying. He wanted me to perform. He wanted me to be a prop in his big day, to smile and nod and make him look good. And if I couldn't do that, if I had the audacity to feel my own feelings on my own wedding day, then I was the problem. "Say something," he said, his tone impatient. "I don't know what you want me to say," I whispered. "I want you to say you understand," he said. "I want you to say you're going to show up and be the woman I'm marrying, not this sulky, checked-out version of you." "I'm not checked out," I said, but my voice was weak. "I'm just—" "You're just what?" he snapped. "Overwhelmed? Stressed? Join the club, Claire. I've been busting my ass planning this wedding, making sure everything's perfect, and you've done the bare minimum. The least you can do is show up with a smile on your face." I felt tears prick my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "I've done everything you asked me to do," I said quietly. "I've planned everything the way you wanted. I've invited your guests. I've picked your colors. That's what I'm talking about," he interrupted. You keep saying you're this and you're that. It's not my wedding, Claire. It's ours. But you keep acting like you're just along for the ride. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell him that I was just along for the ride, that every decision had been his, that I'd been erased from my own wedding. But I didn't. I just sat there, silent, while he kept talking. Look, he said, his tone softening slightly. I know this has been stressful. But we're almost there, okay? Just 2 more days. And then it'll be over, and we can start our life together. But I need you to pull it together for the wedding. Can you do that? For me. For him. Not for us. Not for the marriage. For him. I nodded. What else could I do? Good, he said, sitting down next to me and putting his arm around my shoulders. I knew you'd understand. You're a good woman, Claire. That's why I'm marrying you. I leaned into him, but I felt nothing. No comfort. No love. Just the hollow ache of knowing that I'd just been told, in no uncertain terms, that my feelings didn't matter. That I didn't matter. That the wedding, the day that was supposed to be about us, was really just about him. I left his apartment an hour later, and as I drove home, I felt something shift inside me. A small, quiet voice that had been whispering for months suddenly got louder. It said, you don't have to do this. But I still didn't know if I was brave enough to listen. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying his words over and over. It's my day. Don't make it about you. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. Not loud, explosive anger, quiet, simmering anger that burned low and steady. And that's when the idea started to form. Not fully. Not yet. But the seed was planted. What if I didn't show up? What if I just didn't go? The thought was so absurd, so impossible, that I almost laughed. But the more I sat with it, the more it felt right. He wanted the day to be about him? Fine. Let him have it. Let him stand at the altar in front of 300 people and explain where his bride was. Let him deal with the whispers and the questions and the humiliation. Let him see what it felt like to be invisible. I didn't make the decision that night. But I didn't unmake it, either. I just let it sit there, simmering, waiting. And if you've ever been in a relationship where you felt like you didn't matter, where your voice was drowned out by someone else's needs, then you know exactly what I was feeling in that moment. If that's you, drop a comment. Tell me your story. And make sure you check the description box below. There are more stories like this one. Stories about people who refused to stay silent, who fought back, who reclaimed their power. You don't want to miss them. Sunday morning. The day of the wedding. I woke up at 6 a.m., my alarm blaring the same generic ringtone I'd been hearing for years. I should have felt excited. Nervous. Something. But I just felt numb. I lay in bed for a long time, staring at my wedding dress hanging on the back of my closet door. It was beautiful, ivory lace with a long train, a sweetheart neckline, delicate beading along the bodice. It had cost a fortune, most of which Ethan's mother had paid for. She'd insisted on it, said it was important that I look the part. I'd tried it on dozens of times during fittings, each time feeling like I was playing dress up, like I was a little girl pretending to be a bride. I thought about Ethan. He was probably awake by now, too, at the hotel where he'd spent the night with his groomsmen. I wondered if he was thinking about me. I wondered if he was nervous or excited, or if he was just thinking about the guest list and the seating chart and the deals he might close with the clients who'd be there. I thought about what he'd said 2 days ago. It's my day. Don't make it about you. And I thought, fine. I got out of bed, made coffee, and sat at my kitchen table. My phone was already buzzing, texts from my bridesmaids, asking what time I'd be at the hotel to start getting ready. Texts from my mom, saying she was so proud of me. Texts from the wedding coordinator, confirming last-minute details. I ignored all of them. Instead, I opened a new text message to Ethan. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. What was I going to say? Asterisk, I'm not coming, asterisk. Asterisk, I can't do this, asterisk. Asterisk, you've turned me into someone I don't recognize, and I refuse to disappear any further, asterisk. In the end, I didn't send anything. I just put my phone face down on the table and finished my coffee. By 8 a.m., the texts were coming more frequently. By 9, my bridesmaids were calling. By 10, my mom was panicking. I didn't answer. I just sat there, in my pajamas, in my quiet apartment, drinking coffee and feeling something I hadn't felt in years, calm. I wasn't getting married today. I wasn't walking down the aisle. I wasn't smiling for 300 strangers. I was staying home. And God, it felt good. But here's the thing about making a decision like that, about choosing yourself when everyone expects you to choose someone else. It's not as simple as just staying home. Because the world doesn't stop just because you do. The wedding was still happening, whether I was there or not. And Ethan, he was going to lose his mind. Around 11 a.m., I finally picked up my phone. There were 63 unread texts, 17 missed calls, 3 voicemails. I scrolled through them, my stomach twisting as I read message after message. Asterisk, where are you? Asterisk. Asterisk, Claire, this isn't funny. Call me. Asterisk. Asterisk, the photographer is asking for you. What do I tell her? Asterisk. Asterisk, Claire. Answer your phone. Asterisk. And then, from Ethan, asterisk, if you're not here in the next hour, we're done. Asterisk. I almost laughed. We're done. As if showing up was the thing that would save us. As if our relationship hadn't been done for months, maybe years. I didn't respond to any of them. I just muted my phone and went to take a shower. Here's what I want you to understand. If you're watching this, if you're still with me, it wasn't about revenge. Not yet. It was about survival. It was about reclaiming the part of myself I'd lost. It was about saying, asterisk, I matter, asterisk, even if no one else believed it. But revenge? That came later. And trust me, it was sweeter than anything I could have planned. Because while I was home, taking the longest shower of my life, Ethan was at the venue. And things were about to go very, very wrong for him. The ceremony was supposed to start at 6 p.m. By noon, Ethan was calling me non-stop. By 2, he was leaving voicemails, his voice going from angry to desperate. By 4, he was texting me things like, asterisk, please. I'm sorry. Just come. We'll figure this out. Asterisk. But I wasn't coming. I was sitting on my couch, eating leftover Chinese food and watching a documentary about true crime. I felt lighter than I had in months. And then, around 5:30, my phone started blowing up again. But this time, it wasn't just texts. It was photos. Dozens of them, sent from numbers I didn't recognize, from people I didn't know. I opened the first one, and my jaw dropped. It was a photo of Ethan, standing in the groom's suite at the venue. But he wasn't alone. He was surrounded by bottles, whiskey, vodka, champagne, and he looked wrecked. His tie was undone, his hair was a mess, and his eyes were red and glassy. In the photo, he was yelling at someone off camera, his face twisted in rage. The next photo was worse. It showed the reception hall, which should have been pristine and ready for guests. Instead, it was chaos. Tables were overturned. Chairs were scattered. Flowers were on the floor. And in the center of it all was Ethan, throwing what looked like a champagne bottle across the room. The third photo showed guests arriving, his colleagues, his family, his friends, all of them standing outside the venue, looking confused and horrified. Some were on their phones. Others were whispering to each other, clearly trying to figure out what the hell was going on. And then came the videos. Short clips, shaky and loud, showing Ethan screaming at the wedding coordinator, at Tyler, at his own mother. Showing him stumbling around the venue, knocking over centerpieces, throwing things. Showing him completely, utterly falling apart. I stared at my phone, my heart racing. What had happened? What had he done? And then my phone rang. It was Ethan. I answered, but I didn't say anything. I just listened. Claire, he said, his voice hoarse and broken. Claire, please. You have to come. You have to help me. Everything's falling apart. I don't know what to do. Please. I could hear shouting in the background. Chaos. Panic. Please, he said again, and he was crying now. I need you. I looked at the photos on my screen, the overturned tables, the scattered flowers, the shattered glass. I looked at the videos of him losing his mind, of him screaming and throwing things like a child having a tantrum. And I thought about what he'd said to me just 2 days ago. It's my day. Don't make it about you. I smiled. Slowly, calmly, I brought the phone to my lips and whispered, It's your day, Ethan. Don't make it about me. And then I hung up. I sat there for a long time after I hung up, staring at the photos on my phone. The images kept coming, more and more of them, sent by guests, by vendors, by people I'd never even met. Videos too, shaky and loud, showing Ethan unraveling in real time. In one video, he was yelling at Tyler, jabbing his finger into his best man's chest. You said she'd come, he screamed. You said she'd show up. Where the hell is she? Tyler backed away, hands raised, clearly trying to calm him down. But Ethan wasn't having it. He shoved Tyler, hard, and Tyler stumbled backward into a table, sending a vase of roses crashing to the floor. In another video, Ethan's mother, Diane, a woman who'd always looked at me like I wasn't quite good enough for her son, was standing in the hallway, her face pale and drawn. We need to cancel, she was saying to the coordinator. We need to send everyone home. But the coordinator looked just as panicked. We can't just cancel, she said. The guests are already here. The food is ready. The band is set up. Then figure it out. Diane snapped, her voice shrill. I watched it all unfold on my phone, my heart pounding. This was happening. This was really happening. Ethan's perfect wedding, the day he'd spent months planning, the day he'd told me was all about him, it was imploding. And I wasn't there to save it. Part of me felt guilty. A small, quiet part that still remembered the girl I'd been 2 years ago, the girl who would have done anything to make him happy. But that part was buried under the weight of everything he'd done to me, everything he'd said, every time he'd made me feel like I didn't matter. So instead of guilt, I felt something else. Something sharp and satisfying. I felt powerful. More texts came through. From my bridesmaids. What is going on? Are you okay? From my mom. Claire, please call me. I'm so worried. From my brother Matt. Did you really just ghost your own wedding? Legend. I ignored most of them. But I did text Matt back. Yeah. I did. And it feels amazing. His response came immediately. Good for you. That guy was a tool. I almost laughed. Matt had never liked Ethan, had never been shy about it. He'd called him controlling, self-absorbed, a finance bro with a god complex. I defended Ethan every time, told Matt he didn't understand, that Ethan was just confident, just ambitious. But Matt had been right all along. Around 6:30, the photos and videos started to slow down. The chaos at the venue had reached its peak, and now it was just over. The guests had left. The vendors had packed up. Ethan, from what I could piece together from the messages, had been taken back to the hotel by Tyler and a few of his groomsmen, all of them trying to figure out what the hell to do next. And me. I was still on my couch, eating Chinese food, feeling like I'd just woken up from a 2-year-long nightmare. But the guilt came later. Not guilt about leaving, I didn't regret that for a second, but guilt about what I'd put my family through. My parents had flown in from Sacramento. They'd spent money they didn't have on hotel rooms and new outfits. My mom had been so proud, so happy for me, and I just disappeared. I called her around 7. She answered on the first ring. Claire, she said, her voice tight. Where are you? Are you okay? I'm home, I said quietly. I'm fine. You're home she repeated, her voice rising. Claire, what happened? Why didn't you come to the wedding? I took a deep breath. Because I didn't want to marry him, Mom. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. And then, quietly, she said, Oh, sweetheart. I'm sorry, I said, and my voice cracked. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I'm sorry I wasted your time and your money. I'm sorry. Stop, she interrupted. Just stop. You don't have to apologize. If you didn't want to marry him, then you did the right thing. But everyone's talking about me, I said. Everyone thinks I'm crazy, or cruel, or… Let them talk, my mom said firmly. Claire, listen to me. I've been watching you for the past 2 years, and I've watched you disappear a little more every day. I didn't say anything because I thought it was what you wanted, but deep down, I was terrified you were making a mistake. So if you didn't show up today, good. That means you finally remembered who you are. I started crying then, the kind of crying that comes from somewhere deep and broken, the kind you can't control. I don't know who I am anymore, I whispered. Then figure it out, she said gently. But don't do it with him. You deserve better than that. We talked for another hour. She told me my dad was worried but proud. She told me Matt had actually cheered when he realized I wasn't coming. She told me that Ethan's family was furious, that Diane had made some comment about me being unstable and selfish, but that my mom had shut her down immediately. I told her, my mom said, her voice fierce, that if her son had treated you with even an ounce of respect, maybe you would have shown up. And then I walked out. I loved her so much in that moment. I loved her for defending me, for believing me, for not making me feel like I'd done something wrong. After we hung up, I sat in the dark for a while, processing everything. The wedding was over. The guests had gone home. Ethan was probably still at the hotel, drinking himself into oblivion and cursing my name. And me. I was alone, but for the first time in years, I didn't mind. But the night wasn't over yet. Because around 9 p.m., I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello. Is this Claire Dawson? A woman's voice asked. She sounded young, nervous. Yes, I said slowly. Who is this? My name is Megan, she said. I was one of the servers at your wedding today. Or, well, what was supposed to be your wedding. My stomach dropped. Okay. I needed to call you, she said, her words tumbling out fast. Because I saw what happened today, and I think you should know something. About Ethan. I sat up straighter. What do you mean? She hesitated, and then she said, he was drunk. Like, really drunk. He'd been drinking since noon, apparently, and by the time the ceremony was supposed to start, he could barely stand. That's why he started trashing the place, because you weren't there, and he was too drunk to handle it. I felt a chill run down my spine. Why are you telling me this? Because, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper, I heard him talking to one of his friends. Tyler, I think his name was. And Ethan said, he said this whole thing was your fault. That you'd ruined his life. That you were going to regret this. My heart started pounding. He threatened me. Not directly, Megan said. But it sounded like… I don't know. It sounded like he was planning something. Like he wasn't going to let this go. And I just thought you should know. In case he tries to contact you. In case he… Thank you, I said, cutting her off. Thank you for telling me. Be careful, she said. And then she hung up. I sat there in the dark, my phone still in my hand, and I felt the first flicker of fear. Ethan was angry, humiliated, drunk. And according to Megan, He was planning something. But I wasn't the same woman I'd been that morning. I wasn't the woman who would have shrunk back, who would have apologized, who would have tried to fix things. I was the woman who'd walked away. The woman who'd chosen herself. And if Ethan wanted a fight, I was ready. Because here's what I realized that night, sitting alone in my apartment: revenge isn't always loud. It isn't always dramatic. Sometimes, the best revenge is just refusing to play the game. Refusing to be the woman they expect you to be. Refusing to show up. But sometimes revenge is more than that. Sometimes it's about making sure they never forget what they lost. And I was just getting started. If you've ever been threatened by someone who couldn't handle losing control of you, then you know the fear I felt in that moment. But you also know the fire that comes after the fear. The determination. The refusal to back down. Drop a comment if you've been there. Tell me how you survived it. And if you want to see more stories about women who fought back, who refused to be silenced, who turned their pain into power, check the description box below. Trust me, you need to see what happens next. Monday morning came too soon. I woke up on my couch, still in the same pajamas I'd been wearing all weekend, my phone dead on the coffee table. For a moment, I forgot what had happened. And then it all came rushing back. The wedding that wasn't, the photos of Ethan losing his mind, the phone call from Megan warning me that he was planning something. I plugged in my phone and waited for it to turn on. The screen lit up with notifications. Hundreds of them. Texts, calls, voicemails, emails, even Instagram DMs from people I barely knew. Everyone wanted to know what had happened. Everyone had an opinion. Most of the messages were from strangers. People who'd heard about the wedding disaster through the grapevine, through social media, through the guests who'd been there. Some of them were supportive, telling me I was brave, that I'd done the right thing. Others were cruel, calling me a coward, a bitch, saying I'd humiliated Ethan and his family for no reason. I deleted most of them without reading past the first line. I didn't owe anyone an explanation. But then I saw the messages from Ethan. There were 43 of them, sent throughout the night. I scrolled through them slowly, my stomach twisting. Claire, where are you? This isn't funny. You're making a huge mistake. Everyone is asking about you. I can't believe you'd do this to me. After everything I've done for you. You've humiliated me in front of everyone I know. I hope you're happy. This is all your fault. You ruined everything. I'm done. We're done. Don't ever contact me again. And then, hours later, after the anger had burned itself out. Please call me. I just want to talk. I need to understand why you did this. I love you. I know I haven't always shown it, but I do. Please. Just talk to me. I'm sorry. For everything. Just come back. We can fix this. I stared at the last message for a long time. I'm sorry. 2 words I'd waited years to hear. 2 words that meant nothing now, because they were coming too late, from a place of desperation instead of sincerity. I didn't respond. I just set my phone down and went to make coffee. But Ethan wasn't done. Around 10 a.m., he called. I didn't answer. He called again. And again. By the 5th call, I finally picked up, not because I wanted to talk to him, but because I wanted him to stop. What? I said, my voice flat. Claire, he said, and he sounded awful, hoarse, exhausted, broken. Thank God. I've been trying to reach you for hours. I know, I said. What do you want? I want to talk, he said. I want to see you. I want to figure this out. There's nothing to figure out, I said. I'm not marrying you, Ethan. It's over. It doesn't have to be, he said quickly. I know I messed up. I know I said things I shouldn't have. But we can work through this. We can. No, I interrupted. We can't. There was a long silence. And then, in a voice I'd never heard from him before, small, pleading, he said, "Please. I'm begging you. Just give me one chance to explain. One conversation. That's all I'm asking." I should have said no. I should have hung up and blocked his number and moved on with my life. But part of me, a small, stupid part, wanted to hear what he had to say. Wanted to see if he'd actually changed, or if this was just another performance. "Fine," I said. "One conversation. But not in person. We can talk on the phone." "Okay," he said, relief flooding his voice. "Okay. Thank you. Can we talk now?" "No," I said. "I'll call you when I'm ready." And then I hung up. I didn't call him back that day. Or the next. I let him stew in it, let him wonder when I'd reach out, let him feel a fraction of the powerlessness I'd felt for the past 2 years. In the meantime, I started putting the pieces of my life back together. I called my boss and told her I needed a few days off. I went to the gym for the first time in months. I cleaned my apartment. I reconnected with friends I'd been ignoring, friends who drifted away because I'd been so consumed by Ethan and his needs. And slowly, I started to feel like myself again. But on Wednesday, 3 days after the wedding that wasn't, I got a message that changed everything. It was from a woman named Jessica Morales. I didn't recognize the name, but the message made my blood run cold. "Hi Claire. You don't know me, but I think we need to talk. It's about Ethan. Please call me when you get this. It's important. She included her phone number. I stared at it for a long time, my heart pounding. Who was Jessica Morales? How did she know Ethan? And why did she want to talk to me? I almost didn't call. Almost convinced myself it was some kind of scam, or a prank, or a reporter looking for a story. But something in the message felt urgent, real. So I called. She answered on the second ring. "Claire," she said, her voice cautious. "Yes," I said. "You messaged me. About Ethan." "Thank you for calling," she said. "I wasn't sure if you would. God, I don't even know how to say this." "Just say it," I said, my stomach twisting. She took a deep breath. "My name is Jessica. I'm a paralegal at Ethan's firm. And for the past 6 months, I've been sleeping with him." The world tilted. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest, like all the air had been sucked out of the room. "What?" "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice cracking. "I didn't know he was engaged at first. He told me he was single. And by the time I found out about you, we were already involved. And I tried to end it, but he kept saying he was going to break up with you, that it wasn't working out, that he was just waiting for the right time." I couldn't breathe. "He was cheating on me." "Yes," she said quietly. "And I'm not the only one." I sat down, my legs suddenly too weak to hold me. "What do you mean?" "There were others," she said. "I don't know how many. But I know there was at least one other woman at the firm. Maybe more. Ethan, he's not who you think he is, Claire. And I felt like you needed to know. Especially after what happened at the wedding. I saw the photos. I heard what people were saying. And I couldn't let you think it was your fault." I felt tears stinging my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I should have told you sooner," she said. "Because I'm ashamed of what I did. And because you deserve to know the truth." We talked for another 20 minutes. She told me everything, the late nights at the office, the hotel rooms, the lies he'd told her about me. She told me he'd planned to call off the wedding, that he'd been having second thoughts for weeks, but that his family had pressured him into going through with it. She told me he'd been drinking more and more, that he'd become paranoid, aggressive, that she'd started to fear him. By the time we hung up, I felt like I'd been hollowed out. Everything I'd believed about Ethan, about our relationship, about the last 2 years of my life, it had all been a lie. He hadn't loved me. He'd been using me. And I'd been too blind, too desperate to be loved, to see it. I sat there for a long time, staring at nothing, feeling nothing. And then, slowly, the numbness gave way to something else. Anger. White-hot, searing anger. He'd cheated on me. He'd lied to me. He'd gaslit me into thinking I was the problem, that I was the one who needed to change, that I was the one who wasn't good enough. And then, when I finally found the strength to walk away, he'd had the audacity to act like I was the one who'd wronged him. I picked up my phone and opened the message thread with Ethan. My fingers flew across the keyboard. Asterisk, I know about Jessica. I know about the others. I know everything. Don't ever contact me again. Asterisk. I hit send and then blocked his number. Blocked him on social media. Deleted every photo, every message, every trace of him from my phone. And then I did something I should have done months ago. I started planning my real revenge. Because walking away wasn't enough anymore. Not after this. Not after everything he'd done. If you've ever been betrayed like this, if you've ever discovered that the person you loved was lying to you the whole time, then you know the rage I felt in that moment. The need for justice. The need to make them pay. And if you're still with me, if you want to see what I did next, then stay tuned. Because things are about to get very interesting. And don't forget to check the description box below for more stories like this. Stories about betrayal, revenge, and the moment everything changes. You won't want to miss what's coming. The anger didn't fade. If anything, it grew stronger, sharper, more focused. For 2 years, I'd been a doormat. For 2 years, I'd let Ethan shape me, mold me, erase me. And now I knew the truth. He hadn't just been controlling. He'd been cheating, lying, manipulating me while sleeping with God knows how many other women. But I wasn't going to just scream into the void. I wasn't going to slash his tires or send him angry texts or do any of the things people do when they're hurt and reckless. No. I was going to be smart about this. Methodical. Calculated. I was going to destroy him. Not physically. Not illegally. But socially, professionally, in every way that mattered to him. Because Ethan Cole cared about 3 things: his reputation, his career, and his image. And I was going to dismantle all 3. I started by reaching back out to Jessica. I called her Thursday morning, my voice steady and calm. "Jessica," I said when she answered. "It's Claire. I need your help." "Of course," she said immediately. "What do you need?" "I need proof," I said. "I need text messages, emails, anything that shows Ethan was cheating. Anything that proves he's not the person he pretends to be." There was a pause. "Why?" "Because I'm not going to let him get away with this," I said. "He humiliated me in front of 300 people. He made me feel like I was crazy, like I was the problem. And now I know the truth. So I'm going to make sure everyone else knows it too." "Claire," she said carefully, "I'm not sure that's a good idea. Ethan, he can be vindictive. If he finds out you're doing this—" "Let him find out," I interrupted. "I'm done being afraid of him." Another pause. And then, quietly, she said, "Okay. I'll send you what I have." Within an hour, my inbox was flooded. Screenshots of text messages between Ethan and Jessica, flirty and explicit and undeniable. Emails from Ethan to other women, some of whom I recognized from his firm. Photos of him at bars, at restaurants, at hotels, always with someone who wasn't me. I saved everything. Organized it into folders. Cross-referenced dates and times with my own calendar, matching up the nights he'd told me he was working late with the nights he'd been with someone else. The evidence was overwhelming. Damning. But I needed more. I needed something that would hit him where it hurt most, his career. So I did some digging. I looked up Ethan's firm, Hightower and Crane, and started reading through their code of conduct. And there it was, buried in section 4.3, Asterisk employees are prohibited from engaging in romantic or sexual relationships with subordinates or colleagues in a manner that creates a conflict of interest or hostile work environment. Asterisk. Jessica was a paralegal. Ethan was a senior analyst. Their relationship was a direct violation of company policy. I smiled. This was it. I drafted an anonymous email to Hightower and Crane's HR department. I kept it professional, factual, devoid of emotion. I attached the screenshots, the emails, the photos. I outlined the timeline, the violations, the pattern of behavior. And then, before I could second-guess myself, I hit send. I didn't know what would come of it. Maybe nothing. Maybe they'd sweep it under the rug, protect their golden boy. But maybe, just maybe, they'd actually do something about it. In the meantime, I turned my attention to his social circle. Ethan's reputation was built on his image, the successful finance guy, the charming bachelor-turned-devoted fiancé, the man who had it all together. But that image was built on lies. And I was going to expose every single one of them. I started by reaching out to people who'd been at the wedding. Not his friends, they'd never believe me. But the vendors, the photographer, the videographer, the servers. People who'd seen him at his worst, who'd witnessed his meltdown, who had no loyalty to him. Most of them were sympathetic. They'd seen the photos, the videos, the chaos. They'd seen Ethan drunk and screaming and throwing things. And when I asked if they'd be willing to share their accounts, anonymously, if they preferred, most of them said yes. I compiled their testimonies into a document, added it to the growing file of evidence I was building. And then I waited. By Friday, exactly 1 week after the wedding that wasn't, things started to happen. First, I got a call from Jessica. "They're investigating him," she said, her voice hushed. "HR called me in this morning. They asked me about Ethan, about our relationship, about whether there were others. I told them everything." "Good," I said. "Claire," she said, "I think he knows. He's been trying to call me all day. He keeps asking what I told them, if you had anything to do with it. He's losing it." "Let him lose it," I said. "I'm scared," she admitted. He sounded really angry. Like, scary angry. "You're not alone," I told her. "You did the right thing. And if he tries anything at all, you call the police. Do you understand?" "Yeah," she said quietly. "I understand." We hung up, and I felt a flicker of guilt. Not for what I'd done, I didn't regret that for a second, but for dragging Jessica into it. She hadn't asked for this. She was a victim too, in her own way, manipulated by Ethan just like I had been. But the guilt didn't last long. Because later that day, I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line read, "You're not the first. I opened it. "Hi Claire. My name is Lauren. I was engaged to Ethan 3 years ago. He cheated on me too. When I found out, I tried to tell people, but no one believed me. They all thought I was just jealous, bitter, making things up. But I wasn't. And I'm so glad you're exposing him. If you need anything, testimonies, evidence, whatever, let me know. He deserves everything that's coming to him. I stared at the email, my heart pounding. Ethan had been engaged before, and he'd done the same thing to her. I wrote back immediately, asking for more information. Within an hour, Lauren had sent me everything: texts, photos, a detailed timeline of their relationship and its disintegration. She told me about the lies, the gaslighting, the way he'd made her feel like she was crazy for questioning him. She told me he'd proposed and then cheated on her 2 months later. And when she confronted him, he turned it around on her, made her the villain, told everyone she was unstable. It was my story, almost word for word. I added Lauren's testimony to the file. And then I sat back and realized something. I wasn't just getting revenge for myself. I was getting revenge for every woman Ethan had hurt. Every woman he'd manipulated. Every woman he'd made feel small. And that made it so much bigger than just me. By the end of the week, the cracks in Ethan's perfect life were starting to show. His firm had placed him on administrative leave pending the investigation. His friends were starting to ask questions, starting to distance themselves. His social media, which had always been carefully curated to project success and confidence, had gone dark. And me. I was just getting started. Because here's what I learned in that week. Revenge isn't a single act. It's not one dramatic confrontation or one public call-out. It's a slow, deliberate dismantling. It's exposing the truth, piece by piece, until there's nothing left but the wreckage of the lies. And I was very, very good at it. If you're still watching, if you're still with me, then you understand why I did what I did. You understand that sometimes, walking away isn't enough. Sometimes, you have to make sure they can't hurt anyone else. And if you've ever been in that position, if you've ever had to fight back against someone who tried to destroy you, then I see you. Drop a comment. Tell me your story. And make sure you check the description box below for more stories like this. Stories about justice, about revenge, about refusing to be silenced. Because we're not done yet. Not even close. The second week after the wedding, everything accelerated. The careful, methodical dismantling I'd started became an avalanche, and I could only watch as Ethan's life came crashing down around him. It started with his job. On Monday morning, I got a message from Jessica. He's been fired. They escorted him out of the building this morning. Everyone's talking about it. I sat with that information for a moment, feeling something I didn't expect. Not satisfaction, exactly, but vindication. Ethan had built his entire identity around his career. He'd sacrificed everything for it, including me, including his integrity, including basic human decency. And now it was gone. But I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt tired. Because even though I'd set this in motion, even though I'd gathered the evidence and sent it to HR, watching it play out was exhausting. Revenge, I was learning, wasn't the cathartic release I'd imagined. It was work. Constant, draining work. Still, I couldn't stop now. Not when I was so close to finishing what I'd started. That same day, I got another email, this time from someone named Brianna Chen. She'd been at the wedding. She'd witnessed Ethan's meltdown. And she had something I didn't know existed. Video footage of Ethan, taken in the weeks leading up to the wedding, at various bars and restaurants around Portland, always with different women. Brianna was a friend of a friend, someone who moved in Ethan's social circles but had never really liked him. She'd been documenting his behavior for months, she told me, because she'd suspected he was cheating on me and wanted proof in case I ever needed it. I know this is invasive, her email read, and I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. But I didn't know how to approach you without seeming like I was stirring up drama. After the wedding, though, after seeing what he did to you, I knew I had to send this. He doesn't deserve to get away with it. I downloaded the videos. Watched them one by one. And with each clip, I felt the last remnants of doubt, of guilt, of wondering if maybe I'd gone too far. All of it evaporated. Because these videos weren't just proof of cheating. They were proof of a pattern. A lifestyle. Ethan wasn't a man who'd made a few mistakes. He was a man who'd built his entire existence on deception, who'd lied to everyone. Me, Jessica, Lauren, God knows how many others, without a shred of remorse. In one video, taken at a downtown bar, Ethan was sitting in a booth with a woman I didn't recognize. His arm was around her. They were laughing, leaning into each other, and then, my stomach turned, they kissed. The timestamp showed it was 3 weeks before our wedding. In another video, taken at a restaurant in the Pearl District, Ethan was having dinner with a different woman. She was beautiful, poised, clearly successful. They held hands across the table. At one point, Ethan reached over and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the same gesture he used to do with me, and I felt bile rise in my throat. There were more. So many more. Different women, different places, but always the same Ethan, charming, attentive, making them feel special. Making them feel like they were the only one. I saved everything. added it to the file that was now dozens of pages long. And then I made a decision. I was going to go public. Not on social media, that felt too performative, too attention-seeking. But I was going to make sure the people who mattered, the people in Ethan's life who judged me and blamed me and called me selfish for walking away, knew the truth. I started with his family. I compiled a comprehensive document, evidence, testimonies, timelines, and sent it to his mother, his father, his sister. I included a brief note. I didn't leave Ethan because I'm selfish or unstable. I left because he spent 2 years lying to me, cheating on me, and making me feel like I was the problem. I'm sending this so you understand what kind of man your son is. Not so you'll apologize, I don't need that. But so you'll think twice before you defend him. I didn't expect a response. And I didn't get one. But I did get a message from Ethan's sister, Amanda, 2 days later. It was short, just a few lines. I believe you. I'm sorry for what he put you through. And I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. It wasn't much. But it was something. Next, I reached out to the guests who'd been at the wedding, or who were supposed to be. I didn't send them everything, just enough to make them question what they thought they knew. I sent screenshots of Ethan's texts to Jessica. Photos of him with other women. A brief explanation of why I hadn't shown up. The responses varied. Some people didn't respond at all. Some sent messages of support, saying they'd had their suspicions, that they were glad I'd gotten out. A few sent angry messages, accusing me of airing dirty laundry, of trying to ruin Ethan's reputation. I blocked those people and moved on. But the most surprising response came from Tyler, Ethan's best man. He called me one evening, his voice hesitant. "Claire," he said. "It's Tyler. I need to talk to you." "Okay," I said, cautious. "I saw what you sent," he said. "The screenshots. The photos. All of it. And I had no idea. I swear to God, I had no idea he was doing all that." "You're his best friend," I said, my voice hard. "How could you not know?" "Because he lied to me too," Tyler said, and he sounded genuinely distressed. "He told me you were the one with issues. That you were distant, cold, that you didn't care about the wedding. He made it seem like he was the victim. And I believed him. I'm so sorry, Claire. I should have questioned it. I should have." "It's not your fault," I interrupted, surprising myself. "Ethan's good at lying. He's had a lot of practice." "Still," Tyler said, "I feel like shit." I defended him. I stood up for him at the wedding. And the whole time, he broke off, unable to finish the sentence. "Yeah," I said quietly. "He was." We talked for a while longer. Tyler told me that most of Ethan's friends had distanced themselves since the wedding. That the videos and photos had made the rounds, that people were talking, that Ethan's carefully constructed image had crumbled. He told me Ethan had been calling him constantly, drunk and rambling, alternating between blaming me and blaming himself. "He's a mess," Tyler said. "And honestly, I think he's finally realizing what he lost." "He didn't lose me," I said. "I walked away. There's a difference." "Yeah," Tyler said. "There is." After we hung up, I sat in the dark, processing everything. Ethan was unraveling. His job was gone. His reputation was in tatters. His friends had abandoned him. And according to Tyler, he was drinking himself into oblivion, unable to face what he'd done. Part of me felt vindicated. This was what I'd wanted, wasn't it? For him to feel a fraction of the pain he'd caused me, for him to understand that actions have consequences. But another part of me, a small, quiet part, felt something else. Not pity, exactly, but a kind of hollow sadness. Because as satisfying as it was to watch Ethan's life fall apart, it didn't undo the damage he'd done to me. It didn't give me back the 2 years I'd lost, the version of myself I'd erased to please him. Revenge had gotten me justice. But it hadn't healed me. That, I was realizing, was something I'd have to do on my own. Still, I wasn't done yet. There was one more thing I needed to do. One final piece of the puzzle. I needed to confront Ethan. Not for him, but for me. Because I needed to look him in the eye and tell him exactly what I thought of him. I needed to close this chapter once and for all. So I unblocked his number and sent him a text. * meet me at Powell's Books tomorrow at 2 p.m. Come alone. This is the last time we'll ever speak. He responded immediately. I'll be there. And just like that, I was one step closer to the end. If you've ever had to face the person who hurt you, if you've ever had to stand your ground and demand the closure you deserve, then you know how terrifying and necessary it is. Stay with me. Because the final confrontation is coming, and it's going to be everything you're hoping for. And don't forget to check the description box below for more stories like this. Stories about women who refused to stay silent, who demanded justice, who took their power back. You won't want to miss what comes next. Powell's Books on a Thursday afternoon is usually crowded. Tourists browsing the rare book room, locals camped out in the coffee shop, the hum of quiet conversations echoing through the stacks. But I chose it for precisely that reason. Public. Neutral. Safe. I arrived 15 minutes early, positioning myself in the cafe on the 3rd floor where I could see the entrance. I ordered a coffee I didn't drink and waited, my heart pounding despite my best efforts to stay calm. Ethan arrived at exactly 2 p.m. I saw him before he saw me, scanning the room, looking thinner than I remembered, his hair unkempt, dark circles under his eyes. He was wearing a wrinkled button-down and jeans, so different from the tailored suits and expensive watches I'd grown accustomed to. He looked, in a word, broken. Good, I thought. And then immediately felt guilty for thinking it. He spotted me and made his way over, sliding into the chair across from me without asking. For a moment, we just stared at each other, two people who'd once planned to spend their lives together, now sitting across a table like strangers. Claire, he said finally, his voice hoarse. Thank you for meeting me. I didn't do it for you, I said evenly. I did it for me. I need closure. And then I never want to see you again. He flinched. I deserve that. You deserve a lot more than that, I said. But this is what you're getting. He looked down at his hands, clasped tightly on the table. I don't know where to start. How about with the truth, I said. How many were there, Ethan? How many women? He closed his eyes. I don't know. You don't know, I repeated, my voice rising slightly. You ruined my life, you lied to me for 2 years, and you don't even know how many people you cheated on me with. I didn't ruin your life, he said weakly. You walked away. You made that choice. I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. I walked away because staying would have destroyed me. Do you understand that? You were erasing me, Ethan. Every day, a little more. And I almost let you. I almost convinced myself that being invisible was the same thing as being loved. I did love you, he said, looking up at me with red-rimmed eyes. I still do. No, I said firmly. You don't. You loved the idea of me. The version of me that didn't ask questions, didn't challenge you, didn't take up space. But the real me. You never even tried to know her. He was quiet for a long moment. Around us, people browsed books, sipped coffee, lived their normal lives while mine hung in the balance of this conversation. I'm sorry, he said finally. For all of it. For Jessica. For the others. For making you feel like you didn't matter. I am, a coward. I was afraid of commitment, afraid of being vulnerable, so I kept one foot out the door the entire time. And I hurt you because of it. You didn't just hurt me, I said. You humiliated me. You made me question my own sanity. You told me I was the problem when you were the one who was broken. And then, when I finally found the courage to leave, you acted like I was the villain. I know, he whispered. I was angry. I was embarrassed. I lashed out. You threatened me, I said. One of the servers from the wedding called me. She said she heard you telling Tyler that I was going to regret leaving you, that you were going to make me pay. His eyes widened. I was drunk. I didn't mean. I don't care what you meant, I interrupted. Words have consequences, Ethan. Actions have consequences. And you're finally learning that. He slumped in his chair, looking smaller somehow. I lost my job. I know. My family won't talk to me. My friends, most of them want nothing to do with me. I know. I've been staying at a motel because I can't afford my apartment anymore. I know, I said again, and I didn't feel guilty. Not even a little bit. Was it you? He asked, his voice barely audible. Did you send everything to my firm? Did you tell everyone? I held his gaze. I told the truth. I showed people who you really are. What happens after that, that's on you, not me. He nodded slowly, tears streaming down his face now. I deserve it. All of it. I know that. But Claire, please. Is there any way, any chance at all, that we could try again? Start over. I'll get help. I'll go to therapy. I'll do whatever it takes. I can't lose you. And there it was. The moment I'd been both dreading and anticipating. The moment when he finally broke down, when he finally showed vulnerability, when he finally said all the things I'd waited 2 years to hear. But it was too late. Ethan, I said gently, you already lost me. You lost me months ago. Maybe years ago. I just didn't realize it until you made it impossible to ignore. Please, he said, reaching across the table like he was going to grab my hand. I pulled back. Please. Just think about it. Give me one more chance. I love you. You love the idea of not being alone, I corrected. You love having someone who makes your life easier. But you don't love me. Because if you did, you wouldn't have spent 2 years systematically destroying everything I was. That's not fair, he said, his voice breaking. No, I agreed. What's not fair is what you did to me. What's not fair is that I wasted 2 years of my life on someone who saw me as an accessory instead of a partner. What's not fair is that I almost married you, almost locked myself into a lifetime of being invisible, because I thought that was what love looked like. I stood up, gathering my purse. This is goodbye, Ethan. For real this time. I don't forgive you. I'm not sure I ever will, but I'm done carrying the weight of your choices. That's yours to bear now. Claire, wait. No, I said firmly. I'm done waiting. I've spent 2 years waiting for you to see me, to value me, to love me the way I deserve to be loved. I'm not waiting anymore. I turned to leave, but he called out, what am I supposed to do now? I looked back at him, this man who'd once seemed so powerful, so confident, now reduced to a broken shell in a wrinkled shirt, and I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness. Not pity. Just release. Figure it out, I said. The same way I had to figure out how to put myself back together after you broke me. The same way Jessica had to figure out how to move forward after you lied to her. The same way Lauren had to rebuild her life after you destroyed her trust. You wanted everything to be about you, Ethan? Well, congratulations. Now you get to live with yourself. Alone. And then I walked away. I didn't look back. I didn't second-guess myself. I just walked through the stacks of Powells, past the tourists and the browsers and the people living their normal lives, and I stepped out into the crisp October air. And I breathed. For the first time in 2 years, I felt like I could actually breathe. I walked for hours that day, just wandering through Portland, rediscovering the city I'd lived in but hadn't really seen. I stopped at a cafe I used to love before Ethan had deemed it too hipster. I browsed a vintage clothing store I'd avoided because Ethan had opinions about my style. I sat in a park and watched the sunset, something I hadn't done in months because I'd always been too busy accommodating his schedule. And slowly, piece by piece, I started to remember who I was. Not the woman Ethan had wanted me to be, but the woman I'd been before him. The woman I was becoming after him. Later that evening, I got a text from Jessica. I heard you met with him today. Are you okay? I smiled and typed back. I'm more than okay. I'm free. She sent back a heart emoji. And then, thank you. For everything. I think you saved my life. We saved each other. I replied. And I meant it. That night, lying in bed, I thought about everything that had happened. The wedding that wasn't. The evidence I'd gathered. The revenge I'd exacted. The confrontation I'd finally had. And I realized something. Revenge hadn't healed me. It had given me justice, yes. It had exposed the truth. It had held Ethan accountable for his actions. But the healing, the real, deep healing, that was something I'd had to do for myself. Revenge was the end of one chapter. But healing? That was the beginning of the next. And I was ready to turn the page. If you've ever had to walk away from someone you loved, if you've ever had to choose yourself over someone else's expectations, then you understand what I felt in that moment. The fear. The relief. The complicated mix of emotions that comes with closing a door you once thought would stay open forever. But here's what I want you to know. You are not defined by the people who hurt you. You are not diminished by the relationships that didn't work out. You are not less than because someone failed to see your worth. You are enough. Just as you are. Without having to shrink. Without having to perform. Without having to be anything other than yourself. And if you need to hear that today, then I'm glad you found this story. I'm glad you stayed with me. And I hope it reminds you that you have the power to walk away, to demand better, to choose yourself. Always choose yourself. 3 months after the wedding that wasn't, I was sitting in a coffee shop in Portland, not the one where Ethan had proposed, but a new one I'd discovered on my own, when I realized I was happy. Not the performative kind of happy, the kind you post about on social media to convince everyone, and yourself, that your life is perfect. But real, quiet, bone-deep happy. The kind that doesn't need validation from anyone else. I was wearing red lipstick. The kind Ethan had hated, had said made me look too harsh. I'd cut my hair short, something I'd wanted to do for years but never had because he'd told me he preferred it long. I was wearing jeans and a vintage band t-shirt from the store I'd discovered that day after our confrontation at Powell's. I looked like myself. Finally. The past 3 months hadn't been easy. Walking away from Ethan, exposing what he'd done, confronting him, that had all been just the beginning. The real work had come after, in the quiet moments when I'd had to sit with myself and figure out who I was without him, without the relationship I'd built my identity around. I'd started therapy. A woman named Dr. Sandra Okoye who specialized in trauma and emotional abuse. She'd helped me see patterns I hadn't recognized, helped me understand why I'd stayed so long, why I'd made myself smaller. She taught me that codependency wasn't love, that sacrifice wasn't the same as partnership, that I deserved to take up space. I'd reconnected with friends. My college roommate Maya, who I'd drifted away from during my relationship with Ethan, had welcomed me back with open arms. We'd spent hours on the phone, her in Seattle and me in Portland, talking about everything I'd been through. She told me she'd been worried about me, that she'd watched me disappear into Ethan's orbit and hadn't known how to pull me back. I'm sorry I didn't say something sooner, she'd said one night, her voice heavy with guilt. It wouldn't have mattered, I'd told her honestly. I wasn't ready to hear it. I had to figure it out on my own. I'd also started dating again, though casually. Nothing serious. I wasn't ready for serious. But I'd gone on a few coffee dates, a few dinners, testing the waters of what it felt like to be pursued by men who actually seemed interested in who I was, not just what I could do for them. One guy, a teacher named Marcus, had asked me on a second date. We'd spent 3 hours talking about books and travel and childhood memories, and when he'd walked me to my car, he'd asked if he could see me again. I'd like that, I'd said. And I'd meant it. But even more than the dates or the friendships or the therapy, what had saved me was work. I'd thrown myself into my job at the marketing firm, finally speaking up in meetings, finally pitching ideas I'd kept to myself for years. And people had listened. My boss had noticed, had promoted me to senior coordinator with a raise that made me feel like maybe, finally, my voice mattered. I'd also started writing. Nothing I planned to publish, just journal entries and essays about what I'd been through, trying to make sense of it all. But the act of writing, of putting words to the experience, had been cathartic in a way I hadn't expected. As for Ethan, I'd heard through the grapevine that he'd left Portland. Tyler had mentioned it in a text, said Ethan had moved back to Eugene, closer to his parents, trying to figure his shit out, as Tyler had put it. I didn't ask for details. I didn't want to know. But I did get one final message from him, about a month after our confrontation at Powell's. It was long, rambling, clearly written late at night. Claire, I know you don't want to hear from me. I know I don't deserve your time or your attention. But I needed to say this, even if you never read it. You were right. About all of it. I was a coward. I was selfish. I took you for granted and I hurt you in ways I'm only now beginning to understand. I've been in therapy for a few weeks now, and my therapist asked me to make a list of all the ways I failed you. It was 17 pages long. I'm not telling you this to make you feel sorry for me. I'm telling you because you deserve to know that I'm finally taking responsibility. That I'm finally looking at myself and seeing what you saw. Someone broken. Someone who hurt people because he was too afraid to be vulnerable. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even expect you to respond to this. But I wanted you to know that leaving me was the best thing you ever did. Not just for you, but for me too. Because it forced me to face myself. And I'm trying, really trying, to become someone better. I hope you're happy, Claire. I hope you're finding yourself again. You deserve that. You deserve everything good. I'm sorry. For all of it. Ethan. I'd read it 3 times, sitting in my apartment with tears streaming down my face. Not because I wanted him back, I didn't. Not even a little bit. But because it was the first time he'd ever truly seen me, truly acknowledged what he'd done. And even though it came too late to save our relationship, it meant something that he'd finally gotten there. I never responded. I didn't need to. That message was for him, not for me. And I hoped, genuinely, that he would become the person he was claiming he wanted to be. Not for my sake, but for the sake of whoever he dated next. As for Jessica, we'd stayed in touch. We'd even met for coffee a few times, 2 women bonded by the shared experience of surviving Ethan Cole. She'd left Hightower and Crane, found a new job at a different firm where she felt valued and respected. She'd started therapy too. And slowly, we were both healing. Lauren, the ex-fiancé who'd reached out to me, had become a friend as well. The 3 of us had even met up once, in a moment that felt both surreal and cathartic. We'd shared our stories, our scars, our survival. And we'd toasted to the lives we were building without him. To the women who refused to stay down, Lauren had said, raising her glass. To the women who walked away, Jessica had added. To the women who chose themselves, I'd finished. And we'd clinked our glasses together, 3 survivors of the same man, now thriving without him. Sitting in that coffee shop 3 months later, I thought about how much had changed. How much I'd changed. I wasn't the same woman who'd said yes to Ethan's proposal. I wasn't the same woman who'd shrunk herself to fit his expectations. I wasn't the same woman who'd almost walked down the aisle toward a life of invisibility. I was stronger now. Braver. More sure of myself. I knew what I wanted, what I wouldn't tolerate, what I deserved. And I wasn't willing to settle for anything less. My phone buzzed with a text from Maya. Drinks this weekend? I'm coming down to Portland and I want to celebrate your new promotion. I smiled and typed back. Absolutely. Can't wait to see you. And then I looked up, out the window of the coffee shop, and I watched people walking by. Couples holding hands. Friends laughing together. A woman walking alone, looking confident and content. And I realized, that woman could be me. That woman was me. I didn't need someone else to make me whole. I didn't need a relationship to validate my worth. I didn't need to perform or shrink or disappear to be loved. I was enough. All on my own. Just as I was. And that was the real revenge. Not the job Ethan lost, or the reputation he destroyed, or the friends who abandoned him. The real revenge was me, thriving. Me, happy. Me, finally choosing myself. Because at the end of the day, the best revenge isn't about destroying someone else. It's about building yourself back up. It's about becoming the person you were always meant to be. It's about refusing to let someone else's cruelty define you. And I had done that. Against all odds, despite everything, I had done that. So if you're watching this, if you've made it this far, I want you to know something. You can do it too. Whatever you're going through, whatever relationship is breaking you, whatever person is making you feel small, you can walk away. You can choose yourself. You can rebuild. It won't be easy. There will be days when you question everything, when you wonder if you made the right choice, when you feel like you'll never be okay again. But you will. I promise you, you will. Because you are stronger than you know. Braver than you think. More resilient than you can imagine. And you deserve better. So much better. Choose yourself. Always choose yourself. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for staying with me through every twist, every revelation, every moment of pain and triumph. I hope it helped you in some way. I hope it reminded you of your own strength. And if you want to hear more stories like this, stories about survival, about resilience, about women who refuse to stay silent, check the description box below. There are more stories waiting for you, stories that will inspire you, empower you, remind you that you're not alone. Because you're not. None of us are. We're all just doing our best to survive, to heal, to become who we were always meant to be. And that's more than enough.